We're living in a world where everything is competing for our attention, and this is the case in both the signage and the marketing world. So think bigger screens, bigger campaigns, bigger budgets, bigger launches. A lot of the time, the instinct is to go bigger. At the same time, however, our attention spans are shorter, we're scrolling faster, and we're deciding faster than ever before. So the question that we wanted to unpack today is, does bigger mean better? And does being louder make more of an impact? Hi everyone, I'm Hannah and I am one of the marketing team here at TrouDigital, and welcome back to TrouTalk. I am here today with...
I'm Madison, the Senior Marketing Executive at TrouDigital, and a couple of weeks ago we headed to ISE, or Integrated Systems Europe, as it's known on the continent.
Yeah, known in the biz. Yeah.
So it's one of the biggest signage exhibitions in the world, also really big in the tech space as well. As someone who's gone to a couple of exhibitions in my time.
How does it fare?
Wow. I expected it to be big, to be busy, to be just a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it was all of those things and more.
Yes, it was a sunglasses inside type situation. But a lot of fun. It was in Barcelona as well. I don't know if we said, but that was actually my first time to Barcelona, which was a lot of fun. It was really, really great. And we had the best time, didn't we?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, wasn't my first time in Barcelona, but definitely my first time attending any kind of exhibition like that.
It was fantastic. We, since coming back, have been talking a lot, especially with the team who have been for a few years in the past. They were talking about the difference in previous years to this year. And how the change has been kind of shifting from huge LED screens that are loud, in your face, like completely unmissable, to this year having, I guess, still that same amount, I guess, of, so some big screens, but things are kind of focusing more on smaller, more bespoke things. And we kind of wanted to talk about that today, just because we wonder if it's also a wider shift, so coming into the marketing world as well. It's been an interesting conversation that we've had about it, really.
I think for me as well, with those big LEDs, we did see them, they were there, but it almost felt like they faded into the background a bit compared to the more data-driven or more specific to audience kind of integrations that we were seeing. We weren't necessarily going there looking for anything in particular, but these bigger screens that were very bright, it's something that we've maybe seen pictures of before, and they were still impressive, but it wasn't really from a practical sense what we went there to see. I think we're more thinking now about how can we create really positive, really beneficial client experiences. So we're trying to think about integrations, what makes sense for our customers, and just what makes sense for us to stay in the know about when it comes to marketing. I think it's very easy to have a look at a lot of these, out-of-home campaigns or these very loud, very big, bold campaigns. And I don't think people necessarily always appreciate the data and the value that data brings and what's actually behind the screens.
But I mean, let's not dismiss the big old screens for the time being, though. Let's obviously explore those a little bit. What did you think about the ones that we saw? Like, what were your thoughts?
So there was, I remember one, it had this huge, like, blown up image. It was kind of like an angel, but in armor, like in the background. It's very blue and white and gold. Again, very much impossible to miss. So it's something that you did have that kind of awestruck moment. It was like, oh wow, look at that. But then, you've kind of seen it. And perhaps you start going around a couple of the stands and thinking like, oh, what do these people do? Oh, they're using, an AI-driven language model to translate, translate text, translate things like speeches or conference talks in real time. And there's more you can do with that. There's more questions that you can ask. And I think you really have these big brand statement moments when it comes to LEDs, or, to be honest, any kind of like large format visual communication. You've got your digital out of home in these high footfall areas, which is great. We can see this with, we were talking yesterday about the Squid Game one.
So on the side of the building.
Yes, so when Squid Game was huge, they used train stations and they had like the different numbers or the different numbers of like taxi ranks even, and they integrated that, integrated the screen or the billboard into the environment. And it does make people stop and look, and you have people taking photos of it, sharing it. But I suppose in the end, that information dies down. You're not necessarily there saying, I know for sure how many people have seen this campaign. You're more thinking, I know it's made an impact.
Or if they're your target market as well.
You don't know for sure. You know, you could just have lots of the same type of demographic of people who are seeing that every single day. You're not potentially reaching a new audience or the audience that you do want to reach in the first place. So you've got that kind of 24/7 exposure where you know it's going to be seen, but it doesn't really have the data-driven side to it. It's quite hard to attribute when it comes to digital out of home. Doesn't mean it doesn't have its value. It's very valuable, but you need to tie it back in with we talked a bit about like it kind of your accessory signage, you know, places you're going to put things that are going to have that interaction, that are going to have that data behind them. And I think we're really only discovering a very small part of what we can do with digital out of home. And I think part of it is in the accessories and the additional data as well.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually like prior to coming on here doing a bit of like further research as to other examples of it. Like we obviously saw a small selection at ISE of, you know, like huge vast examples of sort of like big signage and things. But I was looking and it got me thinking about like the Vegas Sphere, for example, being like absolutely huge. I have some stats for it here, but it's literally 516 feet wide and it's got 160,000 square foot LED interior and a 1.2 million LED exterior. So if you're talking kind of big, in your face, you know, incredible out of home sort of catch your attention. Like it doesn't get bigger than that.
Do you reckon you can see it from space?
Yeah, probably at this point. But yeah, it really got me thinking about kind of like what you were saying about the 24/7 kind of visuals on it, all of the bodies walking past, but is attention the same as retention? Like, is that going to actually make people act or have a, you know, or feel anything from it? Like, for example, like you might have in more of like an emotional, like IKEA campaign, for example. So yeah, sometimes it's like big is amazing, but what is your goal from your big sort of LED screen? Like what's the goal of that campaign there?
I mean, like, we're not going to see that probably anytime soon in person. You know, every time we've seen it, it's been a video, it's been part of a social campaign. And I think if it didn't have that, I think, you're going to make an impact on the people who are there. And that's important. You know, there's thousands and thousands of people. But I think what really drives it is seeing the news articles afterwards, seeing how people are experimenting with it. And yeah, it's just interesting that it has to marry into some form of digital marketing to have the fully widespread impact.
I agree. I completely agree. Like just having it up, showing something is nothing without strategy and data leading it. But yeah, so I mean, obviously we were talking about this and, you know, there's a reason brands have done oversized marketing for years is because it works, it stands out, it's cool, it's like, you know, jaw-dropping stuff at times. But then, as I said, the thing that we've been discussing more since coming back from ISE aren't the big screens at all. It's the smaller, bespoke, interesting things that are taking our data, showing us relevant, personalised things and making us feel kind of part of the experiment and part of the experience, if that makes sense. So, like, for example, we've got a list here of some amazing things that we saw, and I'll put B-roll in so you can kind of see. But did you want to talk about one of the things that we've seen that we were very impressed with that we want for the office?
Yes.
Now.
It's not a want, it's a need.
It's a need.
Is that
it's a need,
no?
yeah.
That's
it's good for staff morale, I'd say.
So this is basically a big interactive digital signage table. It's probably got a more specific name than that, but imagine a table and the whole top of the table is a digital screen. And we were talking to the guys there and they were saying that you could pull in. I don't think they'd actually reached the limit yet. I don't know if you caught him saying that, but yeah, he said they hadn't actually reached the limit yet of how many 4K videos you can put onto this table at once. So you've got all these 4K videos. You can add things in like presentations, images, play whatever you want on there. There's also like built-in games. Like it's kind of like a do everything. It's almost like an employee retention thing in an interesting way. And I didn't really think about it before until just now. You know, there's presentations you can do on it, you know, introduce things to clients, you're walking through it. But then also part of it is a bit of like employee experience, you know, if it's something that you did want to invest in because, you know, it was an investment. But when we're talking these like top level businesses and you're selling to top level businesses, having something like this either in your office space or something that's available to be interacted with is just huge.
It's huge.
And something else we were talking about yesterday is that we'll kind of come onto this in a bit more detail in a bit, but with designer goods, we were talking about how what are the few items that you're very rarely going to buy online. I know it happens and it's happening more and more, but when people are starting to spend over a certain amount, they're still wanting to go in store to spend the money. And part of it is that customer experience.
Yeah,
and it's not even just a luxury experience anymore. It's custom, unique, bespoke. It's something that you're just never going to experience anywhere else. Yeah. And there are certain designer stores that have got very specific ways of like what you can buy, what you can't buy, and it all works on a tiered system. And it's like, how are they going to break through these potentially slightly old-fashioned methods of keeping their audience alive? Everybody's probably hanging on to their money a little bit tighter, whereas the designer brands, have money that they've invested for years in certain types of marketing and certain types of sales strategies, but making the customer experience super bespoke could be the difference between, pushing somebody over the line to make that purchase. People, I think when they're looking to part with their money now, they need to feel like it's special. It needs to feel like something they are going to remember forever.
And it was a lot about user experience, we noticed. So it was like in tiny details. So as Maddie was saying, this table that could open endless 4K videos. It had tiny little elements about it that if you touched the table, so when we were there, it was kind of displaying almost like a pond.
Yeah.
If you touched it, the water would ripple. It was really cool. But if there was a video playing and you touched the video, even if it was facing the opposite way, it would then, if you touched the table just like this, don't know if you could see, but that's how, literally a little tap, it would spin and it would know exactly what angle you were stood at, so it could face you head on so that you had like clear total vision of the video content that was playing.
It's reacting to you. It's not even just interactive
anymore.
It's
reacting to where you are specifically, which led on to another kind of thing that we saw, which was from Sony, I think, when we were having a little talk with Sony, and they have these screens that amazingly track your eyes. So it's actually how things are going, isn't it? Like, they know exactly where you're stood.
It's something different. It grabs people's attention.
3D give you, essentially, like a product or an item. So for us, it was some rather fancy, like sports cars. And it would lock onto our eyes, know exactly what angle we were at, so that when we were looking at this car, it was in front of us in 3D. And if we moved, the car moved in conjunction to how we were moving. So it was bespoke to me, my eye line, what I could see. And it was fantastic. And as Maddie said, that's really lending itself now to like the next level of user experience in luxury, isn't it? You're not just seeing the car, you're having something tailor itself to where you are right now. It's meeting you where you are. It's showing you potentials and options, and there were kind of customizable elements that we were talking about, like you could customize it there in real time in 3D, and we were just thinking it's so amazing and so clever and bespoke.
It goes back to consumer uptake as well, because now we're not just looking for somebody to purchase something basic. You're wanting them to have add-ons, you want them to have like something additional, and you want them to keep coming back. And I think when it comes to like customer retention, customer upselling, uptake, it is those really specific like customization options and letting them see them from every angle. It was kind of funny. It was almost like a bit of a video game as well. You could imagine it would be a really crazy video game. You could like see like a character from every angle, or like a certain environment from every angle.
It was like, I guess, gimmicky in the best possible way. It was like totally useful, but also incredibly fun. And once again, off the back of that, we've been talking a bit about like accessibility and what that would mean in the future going forward, that if you have cameras that can give you content based directly on where you're stood, then if you've got people who are in wheelchairs potentially, or at different heights or whatever, knowing that they're all going to see your campaign or your visuals or your shop storefront from the same angle is like really cool. And it was that sort of thing that was kind of just like blowing us away, to be honest. We were insanely impressed.
It's like how accessibility isn't now just a priority. It's not something you should do. It's built in a standard. And it's the way that I think things are shifting and changing. Like it's something that you have to have from the beginning.
Yeah, it stands. And as Maddie was talking earlier about like metadata, it was fascinating because obviously we're all, no strangers to getting constant ads online. So no matter what you visited, scrolling Instagram, you're getting ads for X, Y, and Z. And we kind of got to explore how metadata is coming into like physical world environments. So, for example, there were cameras, weren't there, tracking people. It was like a shop front setup, tracking kind of us coming in and out of camera. And it could essentially track our gender, how old we were. And it got it pretty accurate, you know, maybe slightly older than we'd like. That's fine.
I had to keep moving, and then eventually it got it right. I was like, why am I getting younger? Like, the more I'm like walking around in a circle.
We'll circle back. But basically what they were saying is it can tell all of that about you, plus if you're holding a coffee cup or a sandwich, or if you're lingering around the produce a bit longer than other people. And it's taking all of that, feeding it back to, I guess, bigger companies, bigger corporations, and using that as data. So you're learning in store the same way that you're learning from people's online presence now, which is like revolutionary, to be honest, because I guess there's always been an element of guesswork.
Yeah, and I think
within
you can,
stores, like retail stores and things like that. So
yeah, definitely. And one thing that we looked at a lot was quick service restaurants and how they're using it. So a lot of the time, and like with this data, it is only stored for like a temporary period, which is good for security reasons, but it also means that when you're using it, you know that you have to make sure you're collecting something useful, right? So again, back to sort of like uptake, upsell, you know, you could even have like weather reactionary as well. So potentially, you know, if you see that there's like young people coming in, it's a warm day and they're getting a cold drink, maybe they're getting an ice cream as well, or they're getting like a salad, something that's like refreshing, and you're actually starting to build up a small profile of that person. And it really is that snapshot in time of audience demographic data. And you know, there might be some limits to like how much you can store and save, but then you can actually start to A/B test different stores. You know, you might say like, I've got one store here, store there, they're very similar. And it's more about where are you laying things out? Like, where are we putting these cameras? You know, maybe we can see averages of what sort of people are coming in and what the uptake of that is. And I think, you know, everything's getting tight with money, like we were saying earlier. And I think making sure you've got the correct items in the store, you know, maybe the correct adverts on the way in, the way out, to make sure that you're staying on top of having, especially if you've got a lot of restaurants, in your chain, you need to make sure that you're maximizing those spaces now.
For sure, and it's giving people, I guess, the ability to do that better than ever, really. I think what they were saying, I could be wrong, but I think the metadata is collected through the camera, but not any video footage is captured. So essentially, meaning it's taking kind of like the cold, hard numbered facts, like, you know, women, 21, coming in, shopping here for this long, and metadata is being sent back without actually any kind of, I guess, data about us. It's too, you know, inappropriate to have, which is also like reassuring, and also I think the way it should be, because there is the argument that people might feel uncomfortable feeling like they're being filmed, but apparently that isn't the case. It is just extracting like the data, which is incredible.
It's just a really clever way to do point of sale marketing. Yeah. You know, you're really starting to gather a little bit more of that data, which you just didn't have any of before. And you'll even see places like in shops, they've already got, you know, the interactive screens that you're using to do your purchases on. It's a natural accessory to what's already in place. It's just a bit more advanced. Like, I think, you know, still we're seeing loads of retail stores that are, you know, very, very simple in their approach, maybe like are looking to modernize. And it's not just about like making things like self-checkout. It's also like, well, how can you use these self-checkouts to actually like improve the overall experience of your store, make sure that it's efficient and that you're actually collecting some data back as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I just wanted to move on and quickly ask you a few quick fire questions actually about kind of what we've discussed today.
Luckily, this is my mastermind specialist
Well, here
subject.
we go. There we go. So I just wanted to ask you a few quick things. So don't deep them too much.
Okay.
But would you rather have 10 million impressions or 1,000 qualified buyers, and why?
I would definitely rather have 1,000 qualified buyers, because when you're looking at impressions, you know, that's fleeting. You know, in marketing, there's always going to be your funnel. You're always going to have your impressions. You're going to have your conversions. Everything's moving down. But when you're looking at someone who's qualified, that's somebody who's in the position to buy. It's somebody who you know that you can build towards retention, build really strong uptake with them, make sure that they're using any products that you're selling like efficiently, and educate them and really have them as a partner to your business, rather than 10,000 impressions, which numbers wise looks nicer on paper. Realistically, you're going to have to do a lot more legwork to get the people that you want to be close enough to you and be in that partnership and be in a space where they're going to be true advocates for your business.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that was a great answer. Yeah.
That was a great question. And I do have one for you, actually.
Okay, go on.
What do you think drives action more, emotion or scale?
Oh, I'm a big emotion girl, to be honest.
She's got big feelings.
I've got big feelings. I am like massively into storytelling. I was kind of at uni studying to be an editor, so I had to learn like loads about storytelling, and I just feel like nothing can quite capture someone in the same way that emotion can. There's an IKEA campaign that really stands out to me regarding this, and it's basically it's kind of storytelling with their prices. So they had, for example, it was like a picture of a couple kissing, and the whole kind of big campaign was just, it was their faces kissing, and it had then in the corner like a price for a double bed. And it was things like that, which was really cool. So it was like leaning into the emotion of it. There was a girl, her whole face was up close and she had a tear falling. And I think it then had like a price for their tissues or something. And they kind of played on that, and it was so amazing. And it was like famously really successful, like for good reason. But I think it's just being able to tap into that is so special. And I don't think everyone necessarily can. I think it's easy to go big. And I think in many instances, you should go big in terms of more brand awareness and generating hype. But I don't think anything converts better than emotional storytelling in marketing. To be honest, I think that's the heart of it. I really do. I think that is the heart of it. So
I totally agree.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that we all have got in common.
Yeah.
You can try to appeal to anything that you want about a group or about a demographic, but at the end of the day, don't care what anyone says.
Yeah.
Everyone's got emotions.
Exactly. And it's, what is it? Features sell, features tell, but benefits sell. And I think that sort of sums it up, to be honest. So yeah, emotion over scale for me personally. But I think ultimately, obviously this whole thing, scale versus thing, I think they are just both useful. And as you say, depending on where you are in the funnel at the time, they both have their uses and, the reasons for doing so. But I just think it was really interesting this year at ISE to see more of what seemed to be a shift away from, I guess, like huge awareness and more focus on, the niche, like segmentations of your market, making them feel special, making them feel like they're having a unique, bespoke experience, and I guess making them want to kind of go further into your brand and potentially convert. So I just thought that was super interesting this year.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of the things that I saw were the smaller things. Like there was this porthole screen and it was an aquarium. It's just that's just so charming.
There's a clip,
how do you forget that? It's just something that you're not going to see again.
Yeah.
And then the gallery wall with all the famous paintings. So it was this big, I think that might have been an LED screen.
It was huge.
Yeah, it was
massive.
Huge screen. And you had, famous works of art, and they were in frames, but they were moving and changing. And I love art. That's always going to resonate with me. But it was just so interesting because you just wouldn't have thought of it like that,
Yeah.
It's kind of, you're taking something very, very classic that is like, it is static, but it still makes you feel something.
Yeah.
And you're putting it in something that moves and is interactive.
Yeah.
Like one interesting way to marry those two things up.
It's so clever, and I just think we're probably barely scratching the surface, aren't we?
I really do think that based on everything we've seen, we're still only at about 10% of where we can be.
Yeah.
And this is when it comes to tech, communication, I really do think we've only tapped into about 10% of our total potential.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like they say people only use 10% of their brains.
There's a film about that. I think.
Yeah,
I've not seen it, but there's a film about it.
Great film. You should watch
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I used to love that film.
Is it with Scarlett Johansson in it?
Oh, that's Lucy. I was talking about Limitless.
Oh,
Limitless.
There's multiple. Okay, I need to watch these.
I've watched that about 15 times.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I know what I'm doing tonight then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Maddie. And thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and we will see you soon for the next episode.